Okay, welcome everybody today to Lunch Break with the Rabbi. Today we'll be discussing ethics of our fathers. As we know, as we discussed in previous weeks, during the time of Pesach and Shavuos, it is customary that we learn ethics of our fathers. We also continue, as the Chabad custom is, to continue to study ethics of our fathers all the way through until Rosh Hashanah. Ethics of our fathers is a compilation of different Talmudic scholars, primarily the Mishnah scholars, where usually primarily the Mishnah discusses and talks about different issues concerning holidays, marriage, and whatever it may be. Ethics of our fathers is a selection of different quotes from the authors of the Mishnah that help us become better, moral, ethical people, which I'm sure at all times is a good thing. Today we're going to discuss in chapter 1 of Ethics of Our Fathers a quote from Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya and Nitai Arbeli. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya says the following statement. And he says as follows: make yourself a teacher from whom you can learn from, acquire for yourself a close and trusted friend, and judge every person favorably, even a person who it seems like they have done something wrong. This is, if we look into these words, every single one of these three messages have such important ramifications, and we'll go through each one of them a moment at a time. Number one, we have the concept of making for yourself a teacher. What does that mean? Many times in life, we have lots of questions and lots of different trials and tribulations that we have to come across. Doing things on our own, we have a certain bias towards ourselves. And therefore, we need to sometimes go outside of ourselves and look for an outside opinion, and sometimes an opinion of somebody who we look at as a teacher, as a rabbi, to ask their valued opinion as well. But over here, the Mishnah teaches us something even deeper. He uses the terminology, make yourself a rabbi. And over here, what it's teaching us is the concept of false humility. Many times we look at ourselves and we say, who am I? What can I do? I'm not able to do such a thing. I'm not capable. The rabbis, they can do it. The great scholars, they're able to do it. So the first thing the Mishnah says is don't look down on yourself. Aseh l'charav, make yourself as a teacher, as a great person. You are qualified to be able to take on the challenge. Don't be self-demeaning. Don't have a sense of false purity or false humility. You are greater than you think you are. Not only that, when a rabbi teaches, when a teacher teaches, he teaches out loud. And he verbalizes so the student can understand. Over here, the author of the Mishnah is telling us that when you learn something in the way that you are a teacher, that you have to then explain it to somebody else, and your quality of learning will be much better. Your appreciation of learning will be much better. And then he continues to tell us to acquire a friend. If you look at the words acquire, has two interpretations. The word ukenei can not only mean acquire, but also means a pen. The pen should be your friend. That whatever you do, write it down, memorialize it. Write down the good things, the difficult things, the ideas, this inspiration. You have a grudge, you're upset, write it down, and you'll see, you'll automatically be calm. Make the pen your friend. Feel free to write things. Don't leave things inside. Write it down. Make it something which will last forever, but at the same time also, you will be able to look back and reflect and see what you have done, how you've gone about it, and how you've accomplished it. Besides that, the regular interpretation is always to have a good friend to consult with. As the Talmud says, if a person has worries, daiga b'leiv, if you have a worry in your heart, yasichena, you should, two interpretations, either talk about it to a friend or discard it. The best way we can get through things and challenges or any difficulty and dilemma is to have somebody to talk to about it. The first level is to ask a higher opinion. But once you've gotten the higher opinion, you now need a mode to be able to get through it. You have the friend to be able to consult and to get through it. And finally, the third message of this Mishnah is judge every person favorably. The previous Chabad Rebbe, when he was a young child, asked his father, why is it that we have one mouth, one nose, and two eyes? And his father responded to him and he said, because we have two eyes. One eye is the right eye, the kindness, the positivity, the good that you should see. And the left eye is the one that is something that you maybe need to close your eye to, that you shouldn't look at something. But he told him even further. He said the right eye is the way you have to look at somebody else. The left eye is how you have to look at yourself. We're always quick to judge somebody else. The Baal Shem Tov taught us that when you see a fault in somebody else, you're really seeing yourself and it's being magnified, and that's why it bothers you so much. If somebody's negative attitude that really irks you, it's because deep down you have that same problem. And therefore that person's bringing it to life and he's bringing out the bad, and you see, wow, that's really bad. I can't take it. Therefore, judge every person favorably means, if you would be in that predicament, how would you act? Maybe there's something bothering him. Maybe there's an undercurrent situation which he can't get out of. Maybe there's something that's really disturbing him, and that because of that he's behaving such a way. If I was in that predicament, would I behave that way? Would I be better? Yes, of course, we're all quickly biased to say, I wouldn't do that. But is that true? We all know ourselves. You know who said this thought? Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia was a great scholar of the Mishnah, and he had one of the highest positions in leadership. And therefore, one of the things he emphasized was that even a person who has a high position in leadership also needs somebody to ask. But once Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia had a student who was acting inappropriately. And because of that, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia felt that he has to be dismissed from the yeshiva, from the school, until he comes back and asks an apology. And he came back once, asked for forgiveness. He said, no, I don't think he's up to par yet. He came back a second time and asked for forgiveness, and he said, I don't think he's up to par yet, and sent him away. The third time the student came back, but this time Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia was going to allow him back into the yeshiva. However, this time Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia was in the middle of reciting the Shema, so he was not able to answer him. The student took it offensively, and because of that, he left Judaism and became an idol worshiper, and eventually the movement of Christianity came from that individual. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia forever regretted not accepting this child, this student, the first time. And he was too harsh in judging the forgiveness of that individual. And therefore he made the statement, always judge a person favorably, that if a person's asking for forgiveness, they truly mean it. We are not the ones to be deciding if they do or don't mean it. And therefore over here, that the Mishnah reminds us and tells us what are our obligations, how we have to look at life, at ourselves and the people around us. When we have a moral compass that we stand by, a leader, a rabbi, or a teacher that we can always consult with, a friend that we can always counter and talk over situations with, we then come to judge people in a much better way. We don't only judge people in it favorably, but we also look at people favorably. Instead of looking at the world in a negative, sarcastic, pessimistic way, we can start to have a better perspective and appreciate and see the gold, see the light at the end of the tunnel. It gives us the ability to view things in a greater light. Which Nitai Arbeli continues then, and he then says within the next Mishnah, Harchik mishachin ra, keep away from bad neighbors. Do not be connected with a wicked person, and do not despair when judgment is given for wrongdoings. The Mishnah is continuing to tell us that we have to remember, yes, do people do things wrong? That's true. We have to do our best to be able to create an environment of good, peace, light around us. And those that do things wrong, don't worry. They'll have their time. Things that are meant to come their way will come their way. We are not the ones that have to administer punishment or worry about their punishment. For that, there's law and order and so on that has to be taken care of. But we have to be mindful, but not worried. We have to be mindful for those people that may have an influence around us. But at the same time, we have to see what can we do to be able to bring light to the situation, like we mentioned in the previous Mishnah. And those that want to carry on in their terrible ways, they have their day of judgment that will come to them. That is not our job. That is not what we have to look forward to. Our job is to bring light into the world. And in the words of the Rabbi, he always used to quote the Talmud, Anan poyela diyamama. We are daylight workers. Our job is to bring light into the world, not to focus on the negativity, not to focus on the evil. As crazy as the world may seem, as difficult as the challenge may be, our job is to continue bringing positive light and positive energy. So as tempting as it may be to post that meme or that negative thing because that person disagrees with me politically or whatever it may be, if we take a moment and refrain and say, is this going to bring positive to the world? Or is this just going to add to the divisiveness and the hate and the animosity that exists? Regardless if we agree with the politician, regardless if we agree with the statement or not. Let us think a moment before we post something, before we say something, before we share something, especially on a communal broadcast. Is the post that I am going to say, is that going to be something that's going to bring light into the world? Is that going to bring unity? Or is this going to create more divisiveness? Or is this going to change and create more animosity regardless? Of course, if that's what you're trying to do. Judge every person favorably means judging yourself. Realizing that if I was in that situation, how would I react? What would I do? Do I want to create a more positive reality of this world? Or do I want to create more animosity in this world? That I start separating myself from the evil and the good? As we read the ethics of our fathers, there are timeless messages that teach us. Every single person has light. We just hope and pray that we see the light, the positive in every situation, the good in every person. And as we always spoke about in our previous classes of positivity bias, that we should just have that positive outlook to be able to look at it in a certain type of tunnel vision, but create a reality of positivity. Thank you for tuning in today. God bless you with only goodness, happiness, and health. Have a wonderful day. Tomorrow, lunch break with the Rabbi at 1 p.m. We'll be discussing this week's Torah reading. All the best. Looking forward to seeing you in person very soon.